Hello and welcome to the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. Today is Monday, January 29th, 2024. So the end of this month is upon us, and I'm very grateful to see that the price of Bitcoin has finally seemingly recovered back to something a little bit more constructive, around $43,000 per coin. That's very nice. Even nicer is the hash price, which is currently at 8 cents. Not bad at all. Now, I'm also very encouraged by the fact that grid prices today, at least in PJM Penelec and PJM PPNL, which are, of course, the two zones within the PJM grid that are most relevant, arguably, for Stronghold Digital Mining. Generally speaking, those grid prices looked really, really decent. So there were some regulatory filings made by Stronghold Digital Mining today. I've reviewed them. They're not of particular concern from my perspective to shareholders. I mean, I think if anything, it aligns individuals within our management group. It aligns them even more closely with shareholders. At least I think that's certainly one way to look at it. So again, I don't necessarily see any issue with it. With all of that said, I will say that I am increasingly excited by what we may or may not learn once we get into February, because as has been the tradition for quite a number of months now, Stronghold Digital Mining will typically report its Bitcoin production update. Now, I've said this before, right? It's not like I'm losing sleep saying, oh man, how much Bitcoin did we produce? That said, though, I think it's something that all publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies have a tendency to do. So why not us, right? Hey, if it gives us an opportunity to be included on various lists that, show the companies and, what they produced, so be it. Again, I've never been the kind of person to think, hey, it's how many Bitcoin we produce. It's perhaps maybe more important how profitably or not can we produce those Bitcoins, right? Because, you could certainly throw a bunch of money at producing a bunch of Bitcoin and show like nothing but losses, right? And, that's obviously not going to be a sustainable situation. So yes, I am excited to see what our February Bitcoin, or rather our January Bitcoin production numbers might happen to have been as reported sometime in early February. I think it's possible, not necessarily guaranteed, but it's possible that we may also find out how much revenue was generated in the month of January. That can be very interesting from my perspective, because from the data that I collect, I think that energy sales probably moved up a bit. I think there were instances throughout the month of January so far where it would have made sense to definitely sell electricity to the grid, right? Instead of perhaps mining Bitcoin. But even if it were the case that we still, for the most part, continue to mine Bitcoin, remember, there's always going to be a portion of our electrical generation capacity that will go to the grid. So all that little extra megawatts, right, that kind of gets sent out to the grid, to the extent grid prices are kind of like further, like higher up in price, that's really, really good. We pick up some incremental revenue that way. Not complaining about that. Okay, with all of that said, I do think it could be quite interesting as well if in the same news release that talks about how much Bitcoin was produced and that talks about how much grid sales were made and maybe what kind of revenue numbers we looked like, or rather generated, I should say, in the month of January 2024, I think it could be especially nice and interesting and perhaps even thought-provoking if there's at least one sentence that says, field testing regarding the use of our beneficial use hash to capture carbon is ongoing, or, something that acknowledges, even though I understand we're in a go slow period for around 60 to 90 days, but, the market will not reject a sentence that just reiterates, hey, testing is ongoing, no major issues. We continue to iterate on the design of, the way we're assembling and configuring these carboliths. I don't see any downside in saying something, even if it's very vague, right, like that. I understand, right, you don't want to get ahead of things. You don't want to start making all kinds of promises that, hey, may not necessarily come true. I understand. But at least something that acknowledges that, yes, testing is ongoing and that there will be more to share in the not too distant future. I don't think the market is going to hammer shares of Stronghold Digital Mining just because a sentence like that is included in a news release, right? And I think for many of us that have been very, very, very interested in what's going on with regard to carbon capture, I think something like that can be both reassuring and kind of give us a sense that, okay, things seem to be moving in the right direction. Okay, my friend, hope you had a good weekend. It's a new week. Let's see what happens. Let's stay positive. Let's be great. And we'll see each other again tomorrow.